Episode 1. We won the league at White Hart Lane. The road to the 1970-71 league title.
Welcome everyone to the Goonaholics Forever double celebration in association with and on behalf of the Willow Foundation. My name is Peter LeBeau and I've been an Arsenal supporter for over 60 years. We're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of one of the greatest seasons and one of the greatest weeks in the history of our club. And we hope to raise significant funds for the Willow Foundation as well.
Thanks, Peter. My name is Paul Brooker, and I'm a long-standing Arsenal supporter with 2 season tickets in the North Bank Lower. This is the first of 2 conversations we're going to have with 2 real legends of our club, Bob Wilson and Pat Rice, who were members of that double team in 1970-71. We're going to focus first of all on the league title and the great events that culminated at White Hart Lane.
But first, let's introduce Pat and Bob as if they needed any introduction. First of all, Bob Wilson, who was the Arsenal goalkeeper, who made a total of 308 appearances for our club. He kept 125 clean sheets and was amazingly player of the year in a year when we did the double in 1971. An extraordinary achievement. And I think he came 3rd in the Footballer of the Year competition that year, which of course was won by the great Frank McClintock. And Pat Rice, who made 528 appearances for Arsenal. And I mustn't forget that you had 12 goals there, Pat. Was also FA Cup captain in 1979, and then from 1996 to 2012 was first team coach. Bob was Arsenal goalkeeping coach for a very long period of time. And these 2 gentlemen are the only people at the club who were involved in all 3 of the doubles that we were involved in. So we are delighted to have you with us, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming along to talk about this very special time. Before we start talking about the events of that day, we just want to draw attention to the main reason for being here, which is to raise funds for the Willow Foundation. And we're going to have a look at a short video which describes the work of the Willow Foundation.
Hi, Bob. I'm Paul off the Goonaholics Forever blog.
Yeah, hi, Paul.
The last 12 months have been very, very difficult for charities. How's Willow been doing?
Well, we were in fear at one time. I mean, I guess we're still a little bit fearful, but thanks to an amazing board of trustees that we have, 8 businessmen and businesswomen, they have been determined that a charity that is the only one of its type in the country, you know, we give special days for seriously ill young adults in the age group 16 to 40. So it's the only age group which is probably not in any other form of charity. And we've had to keep our heads above water. Our reserves, monetary wise, have gone down, but there's been some innovative things we've still been able. Obviously, we can't give our normal special days wherever it might be in the country or wherever they want to go or whoever celebrity-wise they wish to meet the recipients. But we've been able to provide what we call positivity packs. So if it's a lady who has a life-threatening end-of-life illness, then she'll receive something that is very much orientated towards the ladies. if she has children, there'll be children packs in there as well, and similarly for the men. So Megs and I are in huge admiration of our board, who have been able to, to sustain Willow at this moment. But it's a difficult time, and we have 6 shops which are all closed, but hopefully in the next few weeks should be back open again.
So please donate on our page to the Willow Foundation. Give early and give often. So that'll be great.
Thank you.
Okay, the double took place 50 years ago, and it was interesting, before we start talking to the gentleman, just to reflect on a few statistics that Bob shared with me the other day. The league title was won with 65 points, 42 games. It's a 42-game season then. We won 29 of those games, drew 7 and lost only 6. And we had 25 clean sheets out of 42 games there. So we must have had a very good right back and goalkeeper to sustain those sort of figures in that day. There had been 3 previous doubles, but the only recent double was in 1960-61, and we don't need to go into that too much. But in 70-71, our 17-man squad included 5 players whose ages were 21 or under. Interesting to reflect that our squad, who played 64 games that season, were only 17 men. They were unbeaten at home in the league all season, and 2 main goal scorers were Ray Kennedy, who got 27 goals, and John Radford, who got 23 goals. We had 71 goals scored, and we conceded only 29 in that whole season. So those are remarkable statistics. And Frank McClintock, the Arsenal captain, was made Footballer of the Year very deservedly at the end of that season. It's a remarkable change from modern football. The workload on those players was enormous. But let me ask you gentlemen, when do you think the foundations for the double season were laid? Bob, what do you think sort of enabled you to really start developing into a side that were ready to win the double?
Well, definitely the fact that, you feel you're getting close if you're getting and finishing in second place. And we had 2 seasons prior, prior to our winning the first European trophy, which was in 70, the year before the double, where we had lost in a League Cup final, and then we had lost in another League Cup final. The second one pretty disastrous, although I think in the modern day and age they would never have been playing that game on the pitch that we had to play on. But anyway, we lost it. But it was also a lot of accusations, and I can still remember the headline, "The Shame of North London," and it was like, we all got together and we will prove you wrong. We're getting close. So I still think out of that adversity, and certainly the Swindon game, which was a horror game, that is what made us think there were 3 or 4 really subtle changes. I mean, you said about the age group, and it's really interesting that of the 17-man squad, 10 of those 17 players came through the Arsenal youth system. When would you see that in the modern game? And so we felt that we were getting close. I think Pat would agree on that. And then, it led to that amazing first European trophy for the club in that dramatic Anderlecht final. And then subsequently, the thing that we're really talking about today, which is our famous double year.
So Pat, you were one of the young players that was breaking through at the start of this season. And you had the seniors like Wilson, age 30, and McClintock, age 32, and there was you, a young lad. What was it like to come into the team as a new player? Was it easier to fit into the playing style, and did you find it a cohesive group?
Well, basically, I think that where I was lucky is that I came through the system. So all the times growing up, it always seemed as though we were meant to more or less gel together and fight together and prove people wrong together, which was the big thing. I think also that we wanted to be able to take down the old players that have been absolutely great for the Arsenal in the 30s and that. instead of people talking about Alec James and all of those type of players, they would be talking about the modern day player.
Okay, looking back at that season and the start of the season, can I ask you both here your views on, did you expect realistically that you could have a tilt at the league title at the season? Bob, what was your view?
Well, simply based on, the dramatic Anderlecht win and the European trophy, and, the third year running now that we've finished in first or second place, I think there was, that there was a team spirit which Pat has touched upon. I mean, I always say it was like a jigsaw puzzle, smooth edges and rough edges, and we just came and fitted together. I'm talking about the smooth edges being somebody, say, like George Graham and Charlie, who, Pat and I used to train with Charlie when he was a schoolboy. And you knew there was going to be, for Pat and myself, I'm not being disparaging to Pat here, but we didn't know whether we were going to make it. But you knew with Charlie he was going to make it. So we had this amazing sort of team spirit. And it got us off, by the way, to an incredible start. Having won something, we actually, started the season really, really, really well. We lost only one of the first 9 games. And that kept, right at the beginning of the season, it's wow, we're picking up where we finished off last season in the Fairs Cup. And I think, Pat, you'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, Bob. Absolutely. But it was not being funny, but it was great to have people like you and Frank and George Graham and Bob McNabb and who was captains in their own right, as well as obviously Frank, because Frank, even to this day, that we when we see Frank, we say, how are you, skipper, or how are you, captain? He's still this day our captain all of the time, and always will be. And and the way he basically showed the young players, don't step out of line, and you've got to fight, and you've got to earn respect and stuff like that. And coming from him, you were basically frightened of going against him because you felt as though he would knock you out.
Can I pick up on that? Frank McClintock was born in what they call the Gorbals in Glasgow, and had a really, I talk about the upbringing, and I can remember what Frank told me, but Frank, as Pat said, would be in your face. If I wasn't coming off my line and trying to help the defense and anything up to and including the penalty spot, he would be in my face. I can still feel him. Willow, you should be doing this. And I mean, he said it to every one of us. And in fact, the Anderlecht game that we just touched upon the year before, we were 3-1 down, and he was almost in tears when he sat down. When he came out the showers, he was shouting and yelling, we only need to win 2-0. Well, we finished 3-0. But, he immediately picked up on it, and he was inspirational for every one of us. There's a footballer of the year in 70-71. There was nobody getting near to Frank McClintock.
So how did the season begin then? Did you get off to a quick start?
Well, from my point of view, I played in the first game. I was really lucky because the first game we played was against Everton away, and usually when we played Everton, we moved Peter Story in the midfield, the man mark Alan Ball, and then I would come in at right back. And then for the next game, which was West Ham away, Peter Marinello came in and I was sub, and we drew that one. I think it was 0-0. Bob kept a clean sheet, and I can always remember I think it was the Tuesday or the Wednesday after the Monday game, is that we played Arsenal reserves, I think it was Sunderland reserves, because we were unbeaten in the football combination and they were unbeaten in the Central League, and it was the winners against the winners. And I mean, you say we had people like John Samuels and myself and that they're playing in the reserves in that game. We won, I forget how many, but it was quite a substantial amount. And I was told after the game, because I wasn't very happy without playing in the match against Everton and then being left out against West Ham. And I was told that I would be in this first team on the Saturday, and it was up to me whether I stayed there or not.
It was the only game you missed that season, Pat.
That's right, Bob. Yeah.
It's the only game. I mean, there were 2 or 3 of us managed to play in all of the games, but only about 2 or 3 of us. And it was, I've been doing my homework just so that you don't pick up on me.
So you had a great start to the season with early victories, but as always, as now, Europe was interspersed with these league games, and it was an interesting night in Rome, I believe, against Lazio.
I should let Pat tell you this, because the lads will accuse me when the punch-up happened in the street. They all accuse me of being in the toilet. Well, I was in the toilet, but not, I wasn't hiding.
Yeah.
But Pat, I think, I mean, it was an interesting one, because we'd sort of had this reception after the game and their team was there, and and then suddenly all hell broke loose. I honestly was in the loo, and it took even Bertie Mee came out in the streets, Pat, didn't he? You were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what happened, Bob, was that in the game itself, they were diving all over the place and kicking you all over the bloody place. And it just seemed unfair. So when the speeches were given and our one was given, they said that, well, don't worry, we'll have a good reception for you when you come over. And we're thinking, you're bloody right, we will. We'll soon sort you out. And I think what happened from that is that when we went out, some of their players came out after us, and they must have said something. And the next thing you know, it was all off. And I can remember, because I was being younger, I can remember running in, and I think I must have told Frank or whatever. Well, the next thing you know, as you well know, is that all the lads all came out from the reception and basically was getting these guys and throwing them all over the bloody place. Jackie Carmichael from the Gorbals as well was there, and he was a tough nut.
But that was all part of the team spirit thing, by the way, guys. This was, it wasn't just 1 or 2, it was a whole lot, By the time I got out the loo, it was nearly finished. But, this is all part of the bonding and the team spirit that we had now started to develop.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I talk about a less pleasant memory of the sort of start of the season? You had a great run, with lots of really exciting results. We've got a lot of goals against people like West Bromwich and Nottingham Forest. And then we went to, I think it was the Victoria ground then, wasn't it, to play Stoke, and got blown away on that particular day, 5-0. I'm interested in both your reflections on that game, because it was a real shock. And there was a danger, of course, that a defeat like that can derail your season. What are your reflections on that, looking back on that?
Well, for me, I mean, I'm the one who let in the 5, so I'm I'm the culpable one. But to be honest with you, it was one of those extraordinary games. They started with this, Pat, I think will remember it, a Terry Conroy strike from just inside the box into the top corner, and just from then on, we were just, it was weird. I mean, it was on, well, the highlights were all on Match of the Day, I know. But they just sort of, it was just one of those games where almost everything that they seemed to create got converted. And that is very, very rare in games to have that, that issue. But you need, we were sort of, I mean, having started the season so well, we had a meeting the next day. We were called in the next day. And I mean, it was straight away, Pat probably remembers it like me. And it was like a sit down and look, guys, we got ourselves into a good position and lost only 1 prior to that. And that team talk just showed you what we were going to be made of for the rest of the season, because out of the chat and the talk and the honesty that was there, we went 14 games unbeaten following that Stoke game.
I think also, Bob, if I'm not mistaken, the game before that, we played West Brom at Highbury. Can you remember that? And we beat them something like 6-2.
It was 6-2, Pat. Yeah, 6-2. Yeah.
We had beaten the previous week. We had beaten West Brom 6-2. Yeah. And I'll tell you what it was like to be in that squad. When Don Howe came into the dressing room whistling and singing, you thought, oi, something's up. And he brought us into the halfway house. You'll remember, Bob, because all hell broke loose.
Mhm.
He had an inquest as to how the smallest player on the pitch headed in 2 goals. And we beat them 6-2.
Yeah.
And we couldn't understand. We couldn't believe it. We thought we were like going to get praise. And we got annihilated, absolutely annihilated. So it might have been a situation where you actually went out onto the field and you thought you were better than what you were in that one game. You know, but it's true what Bob said. It seemed like every shot at goal that they had either went in or you know, nearly went in. We were fortunate we had Bob in goal.
Can you remind our younger viewers what the halfway house was at Highbury?
What it was a room as you were going down the tunnel to go out onto the pitch. There was a room in the middle of the tunnel, and basically what it was after the games, your wives or girlfriends went in there to wait for the players. They could have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever they wanted. And so when we had meetings, that's where we had the meetings if we didn't have them in the dressing room itself.
It would be not only wives and family. I've got to just throw this in. I famously, one day there were guests, there would be the odd guest in there as well. And there was this guy who was saying something to me, and I was chatting away to him, you know, being very amicable and everything. And I'm going out, and Frank McClintock said, "Willow, you keep nice company, don't you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The guy you were talking to." I said, "Yeah, nice guy, isn't he?" So I said, "Well, what do you mean, Frank?" He said, "Do you not know who he is?" So I said, "No." He said, "He's Frankie Fraser." And I said, "Well, who's Frankie Fraser?" And he said, "He's the hitman for the Craze." And I said, "What do you mean the hitman?" And Frank went, "Bang, bang, you're dead." And it was, oh my God. I mean, I would never, ever, ever forget that.
Was he a gooner, Bob?
I think, well, he was for the day, obviously, because somehow he got himself in there. I don't know quite how he got, I don't know who he was friendly with to get in that tea room. But I mean, I had it. I mean, you can imagine the guys once they knew what I'd said, particularly Frank.
What were the other pivotal league games in that season that you can recall as being real turning points for you?
Oh, wow. You know, I mean, obviously that Stoke game was the pivotal game in that we went 14 games unbeaten then. You know, when you see how few that we actually lost, pivotal games, wow, I'm not sure. Pat, can you think off the top of your head? I mean, always.
The actual thing used to be, Bob, was that whenever Arsenal went a goal up, you could go home.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that there was something that went right through the whole league. Don't let them score
to the
first.
Arsenal, wasn't it? I mean, that was it, Pat, wasn't it? That's where the famous 1-0 to the Arsenal came that
Absolutely.
season.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
If only that were true now.
Indeed.
I mean, the photograph that you're seeing there is, in fact, right at the end of the season, which was incredibly important when we're in this tight run-in with Leeds United, and they were on this incredible run. And that
Eddie scored that, didn't he?
Yeah, that's Eddie Kelly's goal with Banksy diving there, and I mean, we won just 1-0. But you know, had we not won that game, we would not have been, well, ultimately in the position to become champions, and then became champions. But that is an absolutely at the conclusion of the season, because we're only what are we, Pat? Are we only 2 games away from the end there? Is it that penultimate game, I think?
Yeah.
I think that's penultimate league game, I think. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It was on the Saturday before the Tottenham game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that is incredible.
I think we were saving ourselves, Bob.
So at what point did you as a squad start talking, if you talked, about we can win the league here, lads? Come on, we can do this. At what point did you do it?
You want to go, Pat, on that first?
Well, I can't remember us ever saying that we're going to win the league. Cannot remember it.
No,
because it was just a no. And people like yourself and Frank and Don Howe and Bertie Mee and people like that, they wouldn't allow you to think about that. Think about the next game. That's the most important one. The next one.
Yeah, there was a moment when Bertie Mee sat us in the dressing room, and I think it was certainly before the Tottenham game, when we were in the position and it was neck and neck. I mean, you know, we're going to talk about, I'm sure, about the Tottenham game, but we had to either draw 0-0 or win the game. If it was 1-1, Leeds United were champions. But just having got through to the final and then in the position to seriously challenge them and everything, he had a little Churchillian speech one day in the dressing room when it was sort of, you know, the famous thing that's gone since then, remember who you are, what you are, who you represent, that sort of speech. And he was good at that. I mean, Bertie was the officer and the gentleman. The tactics and the, you know, the in your face really pulling you apart was Don Howe. And it was a brilliant, I mean, Pat will back this up. It was a brilliant, you know, it was probably a little bit like Arsene Wenger and Pat Rice, but maybe I'm flattering him too much there.
Not as good as that.
Thank you. You've actually segued beautifully into a question I was going to ask you about the qualities that Bertie and Don had, because my sense would be they were very different individuals. Could you appraise them? You spoke about the incredible contribution that Frank made as skipper. I think everybody would understand and echo that. But what made Bertie, me, and Don Howe tick, and what made them tick as a partnership?
Pat, do you want to do the assistant manager thing, as you were there with Arsene for so long, and I'll just talk about Bertie? I mean, Bertie played a huge. Can I just kick off with Bertie?
Yeah, no worries.
You know, I mean, you got it. I mean, Bertie, me, you know, there was a strange sort of, it was meant to be relationship. When I played for Loughborough University, because I was a university school teacher, you know, amateur school teacher, played a few games in my first season at Arsenal. But Bertie Mee was the physio at that time for the British universities. He was the one who went to Arsenal and said, we've got this goalie playing who's a bit of a nutter, because he goes in head first and all that. And he was the one who persuaded Billy Wright to sign me on. And he, as I say, you know, the book about him was called Officer and a Gentleman. And Bertie would have his own quiet sort of way. I mean, very rarely did I see him lose the plot totally. Whereas Don was the former player, England player, great fullback, West Bromwich Albion and what have you, who was, you know, an extraordinary coach as well. He could, you know, he could sort of understand, almost mind read, I think, Pat, don't you? I'm going to hand it over to you. Almost mind read what was going on through, you know, in the individuals' heads, each of us, whether it be Pat Rice, Bob Wilson, Frank McClintock, or whoever.
Well, I think that from a player's point of view, like, and I feel a player's point of view, and also from me playing right back, is that it was just his absolute knowledge of football in itself. He knew about playing like with wing backs. He knew about playing man. Do you remember the time that we went away for once, and we went away because there was no matches, like an international match weekend thing, and to give us a break, they took us away. And Don and Bob McNabb, they had this argument. It must have lasted for about 2 hours. How all of a sudden Don wanted to play man for man, and Nabba says no, because we'll all be all over the place, and we've got to stick to our zonal marking. Well, it was the type with Don. It was the type of thing you could go and you could ask him about anything. You could, if you were left out of the team, you could say, Don, could I have a word with you? And you would go there and you would say, right, what's the matter? And you say, well, I don't think I've done this, and I don't think I've done that too bad. And what he would do, he would say, well, look, don't worry about that. Your time will come again. Don't get all upset. It's all down for your own good. And the vibes that he was given, you kind of way thought, well, it may be my fault as well, because maybe I wasn't playing as well as I thought I was. And you would go away and you would feel calm. It wouldn't be like a military attack, even though, as you and I both know, is that he could sort you out.
But what you're saying, Pat, is he made you look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Made you look in the mirror, look at yourself, and then you know, and you would try and calm down a bit, because, you know, I mean, it's about winning. And,
That's right.
and you would look in the mirror and say, do you know what? He could be right. Maybe I should be doing this. I mean, it's
true.
That's a great description of him.
And of course, he came back to the club and was the coach when you were skipper, Pat, when you won the cup in the late 70s, didn't he? And it was interesting. Arsenal's fortunes improved so much when he came back, didn't they?
Well, it was a situation, pardon me, it was a situation that even when you went out to actually train, he wouldn't stand for anybody messing about or like not doing things 100%, because what he was saying, you train as you play. And so if you're all mucking about whenever you're in training, you could possibly take that onto the football pitch, not knowingly, but you may not be as dedicated as what he wanted you to be. Because really and truthfully, all he wanted, as I'm sure that any football player will tell you, is for you to go out and win the match. Mm-hmm. Because that's what you're there for. It's no use playing pretty football and winning nothing. Whereas it was drummed into you with him, like he wouldn't stand for any nonsense.
What was the mix in those days between tactical analysis during training days and physical training to keep fit? You probably didn't have that many training days because you were playing every 3 or 4 days anyway. So what was the mix like in 1970 and 71?
Well, usually from our point of view is that at one stage on a Tuesday they used to bring you back to the training to the stadium, and I'm sure Bob will remember when we used to go lapping, just running around the actual track to like time yourself. And then you would race against each other and you do half laps against each other. And if you weren't doing that at the Highbury, then you would be doing it in training at London Colney, because
he even had us running up and down in the stands, didn't he?
That's right. Yeah. Carrying each other up and down the steps. The steepness of the inside the east stand. Well, it was always in the stand we came out, which was the
West
east stand. Was it?
East stand, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Can I just talk to you about this issue of pressure? Because obviously we talk a lot about pressure and mind games in football now, but that must be for both of you. It must have built up significantly, and particularly after we got into contention for both trophies. What's it like to live with that sort of pressure as players when you must have been consuming a lot of your thinking, and of course you've got games coming regularly, but you've also got that other time when you're with your family or you're trying to relax. It must be difficult to do that, mustn't it?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head when you mentioned family. That's the moment when, in those moments, if there are any doubts that creep in, you are desperate. Pat and I have been lucky to have two ladies in our life that have been there at every sort of moment. Hopefully we in our turn have helped them, but certainly in footballing terms, from way back, if ever there were doubts in my mind, my wife Megs would be the one who would be sort of urging it on. And I went to every game that I left home, and we lived in Enfield at the time, where she had our 3 kids lined up on the door. And every game I left to play for Arsenal, and I still have a little plaque up here because they did it they made it for me after I'd finished with a gun on it. And they came out with the words, they had John, Anna and Robert, Megs had the 3 of them lined up, and they all said, "Okay, Dad, good luck, play well, keep them out, have a good game. Good luck, play well." And they repeated this, and it was like, for me, it was like the same, the preparation. It started my preparation because, we didn't go out on the pitch before games in those days, which people don't, I warmed up in the toilet area, in the bath area. throwing balls against a wall and hitting a wall in case, and thinking it. So it was so different, and you needed that sort of consistency and that support. And I'm sure Pat will say the same, although were you married at that time, Pat?
No, 70, 71. You sure? I was just a youngster. No, but you're absolutely right, Bob. It was from my point of view, it was family.
Yeah,
it was the family all the time. They would support you. Whenever we used to lose, my family wouldn't talk to me because they know that I would go straight back at them again. What do you know? You've never played football. You've never this. You've never that. But whenever I used to come in and we used to lose, I used to have a cup of tea, sit on my own, and they would leave me alone until I come out of myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what it is as well, some of that does grind into you whenever you're younger. You say I was very fortunate. I worked in a greengrocer shop, and then I went on to become an apprentice at the Arsenal. So I was very lucky. But whenever you haven't got it, and there is a glimmer of you having it, I always remember the one thing that was told to me by the guy that I worked with in the greengrocers. He said, "What you've got to know, if you go to the Arsenal and you train there, and they say to you, 'I'm sorry, but you're not going to be good enough,' you've got to know in your own mind that you tried the hardest that you could, and it wasn't good enough." He says, because what you don't want is coming away from it and thinking, if I had done this, if I had done that, perhaps I would have gotten a team. That kind of situation.
Terrific. Can we just move now into just the title, very much the run-in and the Tottenham game? I'll hand over to Paul to talk with you about the Tottenham game, but after we beat Newcastle, we hit the top of the league, that controversial game with Leeds and West Bromwich. I think we took over the top of the league that day, and that was about half a dozen games from home. Did you then start to have this conversation in the dressing room about we can win it now, or were you still, refusing to discuss that?
Now, that to my recollection, definitely not jumping ahead of the game. The games were still there to be played. We were up against Leeds United, who you could, the argument could be made they played a different style of football to us. We knew how good they were as a team, what great players they had within it. And I think what we're looking at now is the late, great Jack Charlton there with the very controversial goal, we thought at the time, that came towards the end of the game at Elland Road when we lost 1-0, which really set up the conclusion, the conclusion, and the dramatic thing at White Hart Lane. But Bob McNabb will tell you, you can see a hand going up there. I'm not sure.
Guess who it is, Bob?
It's you.
Of course it is.
It is you, yeah. But the reason Pat's looking over there towards the linesman, and I know I chased the referee round the back of the goal, saying he's offside, because he looked to be miles offside, which he appeared to be the front player. And it was only later that Bob McNabb sort of sheepishly said, "I think if you look out on the wing, you'll see that I just played him on." So, in other words, where Jack's right shoulder is there, if you go right across to that far side, I think, Bob McNabb still claims that he just played him on. Whether VAR nowadays would prove that, I'm not sure, but
I think what it was as well, Bob, he ran to the line, to the goal line, to stop the cross.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did. So all of a sudden, when we see him coming, we actually, it was partly our fault as well, because we shouldn't have tried to hold the line. Because what happened? Bob goes in to actually try and get the tackle in, and he's trying to get back in the line with us, and that's when he played him onside.
Yeah, He was still on the way out, Pat, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He was on
yeah.
the way out. Yeah.
So, as we heard earlier, you've beaten Stoke 1-0 at Highbury on the Saturday afternoon. And so you know exactly what the situation is the following Monday night, down the wrong end of the Seven Sisters Road. So tell me about those 2 days, Sunday, Monday. What was the preparation like? How did you prepare? What was the mix of downtime to training time? It must have been a very, very exciting couple of days.
You have a go, Pat, first.
Well, from what I can remember about it, we were in on the Sunday because we just had to have a kind of a warm down, I believe,
We played on the Saturday, Pat. May the 1st we played, and then, as you say, we had to go in on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, we went in on the Sunday because I can remember us just having a jog and just having a laugh in that there, and really trying to kill kind of any kind of what can I say, nervousness or you know, like be more or less thinking to yourself, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But that there, as you quite rightly say, that none of us actually came into that. But the funny thing is that when they put the team sheet up, who was going to go, it said report to Southgate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's only about now. Whether the car park was, where the bus used to park out beside there, it was only about 20 minutes to White Hart Lane, something like that. Well, we all got there. If you can remember, Bob, I'm sure you do. Mm-hmm. We all got there and we're thinking, what the bloody hell are we going at this time for? We'll be there in loads of time. 7 o'clock we got there. Everywhere was absolutely rammed. And if you remember the wives and girlfriends, we actually, first time ever, brought them on the team bus, and they came in with us.
Yeah, it was the most extra. I mean, it was estimated, I can't remember, I think probably 30,000 actually locked out Arsenal fans, not just the ones who were there. I mean, they were remarkable that they were there, but actually not being able to get in the ground. And in one way, I always think it helped because I don't think it gave us that extra time to think about it. By the time we got in the dressing room, it was like, come on, we got to get warmed up, and it's going to begin. You know, our preparation was down to almost minimal, Pat, wasn't it?
That's right.
Getting changed, you know, having the last words, having Bertie's words, having Don's words, and everything, and suddenly we were out there for what, for me, is the greatest night of my playing career without any doubt, because of all places, if you wanted to go and become champions of England, you were going to the home of your 2 or 3 mile apart North London neighbours who had been the first to achieve that in the last century. You know, they played 42 games like we did. I mean, we've got to remember in the years before that, it was, you know, Preston only played 27 games and Aston Villa 37 games. So, you know, it became what for me is so memorable even now. I can almost remember every second and every minute of it, both before the game, dressing room, on the pitch, and can remember it up to a degree afterwards as well. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you've got, it's a ridiculous question in a way, because it was such an incredible night for all of you, and you might be interested to know that we're doing a blog on the game, and I've asked several people on the website about their memories of the night, and so far, including me, who was the same, we've had 5 people, all who were locked out of the ground, who couldn't get into the ground, and it was actually an extremely dangerous situation outside that ground. And the policeman said to me, go home, people are going to get killed here. So it was very dangerous. But within that atmosphere, which is very fraught anyway, I mean, Pat, what was your feeling about the game? Can you remember much about the the actual incidents in the game? Do you feel we were in control?
I thought, yeah, we always knew that we would be hard to beat. I think that when, from my own personal experience, is that we knew that for them, we were if not the best defense in the league. Then we were the second or the third best. So it was going to be hard for them to actually score a goal anyway. I didn't honestly believe that they would score. I personally thought that it would end as 0-0. That's what I personally thought, because we were just so good defensively.
It was almost, just to interrupt there, Pat's absolutely right. At 0-0, I was happier than when Ray's header did bar. And obviously fans and everything, our fans went absolutely mad. But that last 8-10 minutes, whatever it was, became a bit of a nightmare, because, you've got to remember, this is against a club who, they didn't want us, knowing that we had an opportunity, if we won it, to go to Wembley and emulate what they had done 10 years previously. They didn't want that at all. And that last 8-10 minutes was, I got my head cut open by Alan Mullery. I can see him there, number 4 on that particular photograph in the background. All hell broke loose in that last, 8 to 10 minutes, as I remember it. It was just the final whistle was like, one of my favorite photographs is me leaping in the air at the final whistle, and right above me is the cockerel on the side of the stand. The Spurs. Yeah. The Spurs, I love it, and it would be the same the other way around. Obviously. There it is. Yeah. At the top there is a clock there, but the top thing is the cockerel. Don't think you can see it. Oh, right on the top of it. Yeah, right on the top.
That's a great picture, Bob. That really is. And it's wonderful. Yeah. Going back to that other picture, just one thing that always interests me about that picture, that came from open play, that goal. And yet there are 2 Tottenham fullbacks or defenders on the line. So it just shows the determination with which they were defending there, doesn't it? It's extraordinary. Nowadays people don't even put fullbacks on the posts for corners or set pieces, do they? But they had, I think one of those is Cyril Knowles, isn't that there? It was a very, very hard-fought game, as you'd expect, but a wonderful, wonderful moment. Can you remember what you did after the game? I'd imagine alcohol might have been implicated in some way. Did you all go out as a team together?
Yeah, Pat needs to tell this one, because he was there longer than I was. I think, anyway. I'm assuming you went into the pub.
We ended up going to the pub that us as players used to go into, the White Hart in Southgate.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
We had maybe. Oh, look at me!
That wasn't in the pub, by the way.
I look there, Willow.
I know. Look at the young, fresh-faced 21-year-old.
God blimey! I tell you what, I didn't realise I was so good-looking, Bob.
Yeah, bottom right-hand corner for those people watching who don't recognise you, Pat. And it's a good job they cut the photograph there.
Yeah. I'm not too sure, Bob. Might have needed a magnifying glass, something like that. The thing about it is, you couldn't go too crazy because you were playing at Wembley on the following weekend. So it wasn't going out and getting smashed all over the place, because if you went in the next day and Don Howe seen you like that, a bit bleary-eyed and that there, then you could very easily have a physical morning.
I did the Legends tour with Charlie, and he told me that you all left him behind on that night, and he ended up going home on the bus with the fans while you lot went down the pub.
That wouldn't surprise us with Charlie.
Yeah, he chose to do it. Charlie lived, a mile and a half or whatever from Highbury, so he wanted to go home. At that time, I'm not sure we'd made up our minds to go to the pub. And Charlie went there, and Pat probably doesn't remember this, but I had quite a lot of family go to the game, and I was so so unbelievably, I can't tell you just how it felt. You know, the amateur school teacher had finally become one of the team that became champions of England. And we were in that pub. And as Pat will tell you, I've never been really a great beer drinker. And I stayed for about 35, 40 minutes just wanting to get home, and escaped actually through a room at the back where there was a toilet. And I actually climbed through a window to go out, get the car and drive home. And I, and then nobody missed me, you know.
Well, do you mean to tell me, Bob, that you didn't buy a round?
There's no chance I bought around. No chance.
So there we are, champions of England. We've done it on that Monday night. Most of us, me certainly, were listening to the updates, not even a live commentary on the radio, and frantically biting our fingernails and what have you. But we'd done it. And we're moving towards our natural break in this thing about the double. But we did want to ask you, I think particularly Pat, you've been involved in, well, I think for those of my generation, virtually every title that we've been involved in during our lives. And I wondered if there was differences between the league winning teams of Arsenal that you've been involved in and that first magical one when you were just 21 years old.
Good question.
But I think from my point of view, the thing that runs through it is that it's hard to score against them. You know, I mean to say with the ones with like the Invincibles and people like that, or teams like that. I mean to say, when you look at what they have done, and you've looked at what we've done as well in the double winning side, the basis of the team has been the defence. They've always had a great goalkeeper, great defenders, and people up front who can do the extraordinary things. God bless him, little George Armstrong. He could put a ball on anybody's head from whatever distance you want. It can be 15 yards, it can be 50 yards. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and we miss him terribly. But that to me was the basis of it all. It was be hard to score against. I don't know what you...
David Seaman, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just going to chip in because David Seaman, you know, in his first season, I mean, I let in 29 goals, I think it was, you know, which was great in our time, but he let in 17 or 18 only. You know, it was extraordinary. I mean, he had an amazing first season there. But yeah. It was such a great question you've asked Pat there, because, you know, Pat Rice is, of all the things Arsenal have won, you know, and, you know, if you count the Community Shields, we've won 47 trophies in all, and which is incredible. And, you know, he has been a part as a player, a coach, a manager for a short, assistant manager, or you were a manager for a week or two, weren't you, Pat, as well? Definitely.
Unbeaten, Bob, unbeaten.
But in the history, guys, of Arsenal Football Club, Pat Rice has been involved in a winning trophy more than anybody else in the history of the club.
That's a tremendous record.
And I didn't know that because Bob told me. I didn't have a clue.
Well, that's a tremendous testament to a great servant of the club. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed, we'll draw that segment to close. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to go to the Goonaholics Forever website. We have a tile there where you can donate, and please donate generously. We're also going to have an online auction, where we have some memorabilia signed by these gentlemen and other players from the club. So please give generously and enjoy our next podcast, looking at the FA Cup win at Wembley a few days later.